We are live. Hello and welcome to the Fuck Up Night Volume 5, everyone. Great to see you. How's it
Hello.
going?
Looking forward to it.
Yes,
Love,
awesome.
love to hear all those fuck ups.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope
Pretty
we hear
excited.
some from you guys.
Don't worry,
Yeah.
we have a lot of good stories for you.
Yes. So before we go into introduction mode and so on, so for everyone who is watching this, please let us know from where you are listening and watching this. Say the town and say hi to us. And we have already the first comment coming in, which is from Joshua Countdown. Hello, Joshua from South Africa. So everyone watching this, please let us know from where you are. Just put it into the chat and I will bring it up. So, Jean, take us away. Tell us a little bit about what we are doing, what this is all about.
Yeah, I will start with the first fuck up of the night because today I had to drive 7 hours from south to the north of Germany, and I couldn't do it before the event. I cannot do it after the event. So I said I am doing the event during my 7-hour drive. So I stopped my car, and you can see the bike behind me. So the first fuck up comes from me, but Jens and I organizing this event for the 5th time. And thank you this time, Roel and Sepehr, for being brave enough to share their failure stories, or in the other words, fuck up stories. Our concept is very straightforward, and we would like to, as Jens and I, we are both entrepreneurs, we would like to encourage new entrepreneurs to learn from the failure of successful and experienced entrepreneurs. Therefore, we have Roel and Sepehr with us to share, as experienced entrepreneurs, to share their failure stories. A little bit about me is, I am the founder of 360 Digital Transformation, where we help small and medium businesses to optimize, digitalize, and automate their businesses. And I host the Digital Mittelstand podcast on YouTube as well on the same topic. But long story short, I will give it to Jens. He will introduce himself, give you a little bit information about the agenda, and we quickly start with the fuck up stories.
Yes. And before I introduce myself, more important, our people's watching. So we have Ahmad from Ireland.
Ireland.
Hello, Ahmad. And then Joshua again, San Francisco Bay, South Africa. Cannot failure, part of life. Enjoy the race.
Thank you, Joshua.
A little bit about myself. So, I'm an entrepreneur since 2 years, coming from the corporate world, and that's literally enough to know about myself. Jean and I worked not really worked together, but got to know each other when we both lived and worked in Russia, and stayed in contact since ever, and which is like more than 6-7 years already almost. And really enjoyed to like learn from each other, talk about our businesses, and see things through, and came up with this fuck up night concept, and say, hey, let's just try it. And that's literally how we got to do this. And we did it a couple of times. We did a small summer break now, and after summer, which is almost winter now, coming back. And from an agenda perspective, we now go a little bit into introducing our speakers, and then every speaker will do literally talking about their fuck ups. But before we do that, like short introduction, Roel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah.
Roel,
I'm Dutch, living in a little city just north of Amsterdam. 64 years old, happy with my family, 2 sons and 3 grandchildren. A mountaineer since I'm 12. I'm starting to get better and better in high altitude mountaineering. So that's my big passion. And to do that, I have to ride my bicycle a lot, because in Holland, the highest mountain is 118 meters. So not that much practice over here in this country. I was raised in food retail, literally. My father joined a global retailer, which is today called Ahold Delhaize, when I was 12. And then still the grandsons of the founder of the company were in the company. And I have always been fascinated by the stories of Mr. Albert Heijn, who was the CEO for a long time afterwards, because he could explain so fascinating about that you have to understand the street, you have to understand consumers to create business. So during military services, because I've got that age, so I was listed in the military services a long time ago, joined the Marine Corps, and got the passion for mountaineering there. When I was 25, I entered Ahold, the mother company of Albert Heijn, spent 18 years in the corporate business. But within that corporate environment, I found out that within that corporate environment, I was actually an entrepreneur because I got all the assignments nobody wanted, which was a lot of fun. And I will tell you some fuck ups later on, let's say in that environment. But 20 years ago, I decided to quit. And started my own network with my best friend, who also came from the same company, but he was responsible for HR and I was responsible for business development. And actually, we grew that network, the two of us, into a successful network today, which is based on friendship and passion for, let's say, certain expertise. Working for big global companies where I met Jens, all the way to very small private owned companies in the Netherlands or in Germany or Belgium, with one big passion is how to create value for those companies on the long run. So with an expensive wording, you would say, okay, this has to do with vision and strategy development and implementation. And that's what we do. And that's what we intend to do for at least until we die. Because we're not going to retire. We will work as long as clients want us and as long as we have fun.
50 more
today
years.
it looks at least 50 more years. My partner always says, listen, I will become the oldest entrepreneur in the Netherlands. So, and I'm a little bit younger, so I'm going to beat him. So that's who I am.
Great.
Give it to you, Sepehr.
Yeah, exactly. Sepehr, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, hello, everyone. My name is Sepehr. I'm, Iranian Canadian. I lived most of my adulthood in Canada. I have a PhD in chemical engineering from Polytechnique Montreal. So, I speak French, English, and Farsi. I started my own company with I come from a family, a family of entrepreneurs. My father is one of the older entrepreneurs in the country. He started many years ago, almost 45 years ago, and he is one of the most successful mechanical engineers in Iran right now. He has started a couple of companies in HVAC business and in engineering consulting, and I was inherited part of the business, which I'm going to tell you about the fucked up that we lost the company and we had to start over from scratch. So 4 years ago, I started my own company in engineering consulting. Basically, I'm consulted to many manufacturing companies from automotive, oil and gas, power generation to defense contracts. Not the bad kind. I'm not in the nuclear business, so rest assured about that. But we do some humanitarian work in demining and detection of ordnance and explosives. As I said, I moved back to Iran about 4 years ago, before Mr. Trump became the president. So everything was fine, no sanctions. Europeans and Asians were just competing with each other to get part of the business, part of the cake. But everything collapsed when Mr. Trump became the president. And many of my fuck up stories come from the results of Mr. Trump's decisions, actions. But we became very resilient all the way on the way, and I'm very glad to be on this show to share my story with your audience.
Yes, awesome. We got someone else joining us from Berlin, Germany. Hallo nach Berlin. Umix IT. Whoever that is.
Hi.
Great to have you. There are a couple of more viewers because I can see the numbers. So I would love to hear and see where you come from and where you're watching this. So put it in the chat. So we can put it up as well. But let's get started. Fuck ups. Roel.
Yeah.
You said you want to start.
Yeah. Somebody said I had the oldest rights or so. But no, I would love to start because I learned one thing, let's say, during my working life is that I have learned more from my fuck ups than from my successes. Because let's say success is always nice for one day and then it becomes normal, but fuck ups keeps being a kind of a mind-boggling thing. Okay, why did I fuck up, and what could I have done not to fuck up? And I want to share 3 stories actually, but maybe we can swap between my first story and then Sepehr, you will take one and I will take another one, and we'll see how we proceed from there. Otherwise, you guys have to listen to me too long. But the first one is actually from when I was working for Ahold Delhaize, and I was responsible for business development for the company globally. And in that position, I became responsible for a joint venture between Ahold Delhaize and the Royal Shell. And Royal Shell is a big oil company. And actually, people from Royal Shell and Royal Ahold in those days said it could be interesting to join forces where we add, let's say, the supermarket offer to a gasoline station. And they tried it before I joined the joint venture, and they failed. And then they called me and said, well, would you give it a try? Because we think, let's say, convenience, and don't forget, I'm talking 25 years ago, convenience could be a thing for the future. So I said, okay, but I'm not going to share my end responsibility with somebody from Shell. So I want both shareholders to approve my appointment. And actually the shareholders, so the board, I had 2 shareholders, Shell and Ahold, they said, okay, and we will split your salary, so you are responsible for this joint venture. And we created a team, half 50% Ahold people, 50% Shell people. And actually the first thing we did was successful. I have to say, the fuck up comes later, was successful. We were trying, or I tried to blend the 2 cultures, because if you talk with people from Shell, they really get excited from a huge drilling rig in an ocean where they can drill around a parabole, kind of very technical, advanced technology. And if you talk to food retailers, they get excited by a Christmas dinner and the composition of a Christmas dinner. And actually, we started to learn one another and started to respect one another, and we started the whole joint venture. And within 6 months, we opened 50 stores at 50 gasoline stations. And after 1 year, we had 100 stores in 100 gasoline stations. And we had a turnover of 100 million without gasoline and oil and that kind of stuff. So we had 100 million store turnover after a year, making an incredible lot of money, but also the gasoline station visitors increased, and we didn't cannibalize with, let's say, the convenience store to the existing supermarket. So we really thought as a team, we are on the winning side of everything. And then it came after 1 year, there was that beautiful moment that we said, okay, let's evaluate the relation and see how we move from there. And there the fuck up starts. Because what happened is my 2 shareholders, the president of Royal Ahold and the president of Royal Shell, they said, we don't want your evaluation rule. We want an external, neutral expert to evaluate, let's say, your venture. I said, fine. In the end, that became McKinsey. So I worked together with my team, with people from McKinsey, very intensively, did an evaluation. And I will never forget the words that the partner of McKinsey said to me, Roel, you struck gold, you struck oil. I mean, we're creating market share, we're making millions of money, bottom line, unbelievable. And I will never forget the moment the 2 shareholders came to my office to meet my team and look at the evaluation. I mean, the 2 big guys from Shell, the president from Shell globally and the president from Ahold globally entered the room. And from that moment, you could feel that the air was chilling, was below freezing, because, and there my fuck up started. What I didn't realize, they knew one another from the past. and they didn't like one another in the past. So that whole shareholder meeting only lasted for 15 minutes. And we were sitting there presenting all those beautiful figures, all that beautiful, let's say, outlooks to the future. And they said after 10 minutes, 15 minutes, nice try, but we won't continue. And we were sitting there in the room, what the fuck is going on here? I mean, guys, I mean, we struck gold. And but they didn't want to explain anything. I found out after, let's say, that meeting that they knew one another. They were in the same trainee class as financial experts 30 years before that. They didn't like one another. Actually, some people even said they hated one another. And I completely missed that. And my biggest learning there was that I got so enthusiastic, let's say, on the challenge itself, that I trusted the people that were, let's say, my direct shareholders, so the people that were running Holland from both companies. And I never asked thoroughly through, okay, but what is, let's say, the bigger agenda behind this? Because if I would have done that, I would have known that this was a mission impossible from day zero, actually, from the whole, let's say, idea phase. But can you imagine that the call is made, stop, close all stores, and I want Albert Heijn out of Shell within the next 14 days. And both companies took the losses of that investment, and that was not a small investment, I can tell you, just on personal reasons. So that was my first learning, and a huge fuck up because the team was frustrated. People quitted their jobs, they left for other companies. The beauty is, though, that if I would have known that, let's say, those two people hated one another, I would have picked another gasoline company, because today, actually, the same company Ahold has is having a joint venture with BP, and it runs perfectly because they like one another on top level. So I blame myself for not doing my homework thorough enough, jumping into the challenge itself quickly, and not having my radar good enough on, okay, but who are really calling the shots here? That's my first fuck up.
Amazing. Yeah, a lot of learnings on that. So for everyone having questions to Roel and that story, please put them into the chat. We will take time later. Let's get a couple of people up. So we have, first of all, Vansh from Bangalore, India. Welcome. Greetings to India. We have Hoy from Amsterdam, or Linda. She's saying Hoy from Amsterdam.
Yeah.
That's the ignorance of the German here. We have Shahar, and he is from Iran. Great to have you. And we have another one, which is Nima from Iran, live in Italy. So we are already like covering the whole globe almost.
Cool.
It's great to see you.
Good.
If there's anyone who hasn't
Great.
posted, which I guess because I see more listeners than we have people who have said where they come from, let us know. It's always interesting to see. And if you have questions to any of the guests, any of the stories, or as well to Jean or myself, put them into the chat and I will bring them up later. Let's get to Sepehr. Tell us your fuck up.
Okay, a very nice story from Roel. Now I'm going to share one with you. It's well, I have to go a little bit back. I was born during the war, so I'm a war generation, and we were, suffering a lot. And my generation was very special. And in Iran, we have this university entrance exam. Almost 2 million people, something like that, participated back in the days when I was taking the exam, and I got ranked 900. So it's a pretty good rank, and I entered a very good university, Sharif University of Technology, which is a renowned university all over the world. And there are people in very key positions in many successful companies from this university. But when I entered the university, I wasn't really focused on my studies. I was mostly focused on working at my father's company. I was mostly in the business. I wasn't interested in the theory, so my grades weren't that high, and I had some failed grades. So when I wanted to apply for masters, I had some problems because there was basically no university in the world that wanted me. Everybody wants the top class, top all straight A students, but I wasn't one of them. I have to be honest. But at the end of the day, I was admitted to this very small university in Canada in a city named Windsor, which is basically on the border between United States and Canada. It's the other side. It's a river, and on the other side is Detroit. So Windsor is a very small, very small city, almost 100,000 people. But I even believe that it's less than that. So imagine somebody coming all the way from Tehran, 15 million people, to a city is basically so small. There's nothing to do in it. And for 2.5 years, I had to live there, and I had to, elevate my grades, build up my resume from scratch. And from when I was very, very young, I always had the dream to study at McGill University. I mean, everybody in Canada wanted to go to McGill because of all the Nobel laureates, all the fascinating research that they had over there. So at close to the end of my master's studies, I went to Montreal to find a supervisor and find a position, PhD position over there. I searched a little bit. Well, I discussed with some professor, and at the end of the day, there was this young guy that he just started, and it was his first student that he wanted to admit. And we met over there. He was very fascinated by my story, and he said, "Okay, don't talk to anybody else. I'm gonna take you." And I was really proud that, okay, I'm gonna go to McGill. Everything is gonna be fine. So we even started some of the project, prior to getting admitted, and everything was smooth. And I was like, yeah, my dreams are going to come true. I'm going to go to McGill. But, 2, 3 weeks before the admission deadline, I received this call from the professor that, you know what, I cannot take you. And I was really shocked because I hadn't even, discussed with other universities, other professors. The dream was coming true. It was McGill. And the gentleman told me that the admission board has decided that my past would haunt me. So the grades that I had collected during my bachelor studies wouldn't let me to get admitted to McGill University because they had some standards. And I mean, I had even rented an apartment in Montreal. I had discussed this with a lot of people, and basically everybody was expecting me to get to McGill. But I just heard the news that this would be impossible for me, and I had to look elsewhere. And I mean, at the time, I was devastated. I was like, my the castle of my dreams like collapsed. And I mean, I didn't even have a security school to pursue my PhD studies. But a very important lesson I learned from this. I learned that I should never put all my eggs in one basket. I was so drunk by the success of studying at McGill that I didn't even consider the rest of my options, and I almost lost my opportunities to start a PhD position. But something very good came out of this at the end. So I was panicked. I didn't have other options. So I went back to Montreal, and there is another school, but it's a French school called Polytechnique Montreal. It's part of the University of Montreal. So I went over there and I met one of my old classmates at Sharif University. So he introduced me to his supervisor, and at the end of the day, I was admitted to Polytechnique Montreal, and getting admission to Polytechnique Montreal and studying over there, I believe it was one of the best things ever happened to me in my life. And at the end, I'm really glad that I was not admitted to McGill.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for these great stories, Sepehr. Sometimes when we zoom in so close, we miss the bigger picture. But some rejections, some failures lead to bigger successes. And your story is a great example of this. Thank you for sharing with us.
Yes, really great story. Let's get someone else on the screen. And hi to Germany again, Pia. Great to see
Hi,
you in
Pia.
the live world. Normally, I see her only on WhatsApp during the last couple of months, at least.
Yeah.
So, Roel, you said you have more stories. So, in case any one of you has a question to one of the guests, please post them in the chat. But let's start with Roel. You said you have more fuck ups, and you're on mute.
Yeah, there was somebody crying next door. So I thought, okay, you should not be in the world of a 2-year-old who is refusing to eat. No, the second story I wanted to share is when I decided to quit at Ahold. The reason was actually that I was asked by the CEO of Ahold to lie to analysts about the future of e-commerce, because my last responsibility working for that big corporate was to start e-commerce 22 years ago. We couldn't even spell the word e-commerce. We had no clue what we were going to do. But after a while, I thought, okay, I'm the expert. And then he said, well, you have to go with me to an analyst meeting because they were stock listed. And he said, I already prepared your presentation. And I thought, what? So I recognized at least the first pages of the presentation. But when, let's say, he moved on in the presentations, the future of e-commerce was twice as high as what my team predicted. So I said, well, I'm not going to lie because it's not true what you're saying. So with the best of our knowledge, this is let's say the future. No. You have to say what I want because I'm the CEO, and it also will affect your bonus because my bonus was connected to let's say the shareholder price. So if you predict a beautiful, let's say pink future, I mean the shareholder or the stock price will go up, and that you will also benefit from a personal level. I said, well, I'm not for sale, so I'm not going to do that. So we were no friends anymore. And it took me a year to decide I'm quitting the company and I will start, let's say, my own company because I'm not raised by my parents to lie. But the thing is, I was fucking myself because I quit. I stepped into a big, deep, dark world, which was a little bit frightening after being in a big corporate for 18 years. I had no clue what I could do in the outside world. And I was actually feeling very sorry for myself that I quit. So I was still looking at all the articles in the newspapers about Ahold. I actually was approached by Ahold to come back, and I even stepped over that line. I went back and talked to them. My father got really angry at me. He said, where are your principles? You quit for the right reasons. So no, but it's a beautiful company. Long story short, I stepped into, let's say, a big, dark world together with my best friend, former colleague. And actually, the first 2 years was a disaster. They were a disaster. I was still addicted to that big corporate with all the beautiful challenges I got over there. And I couldn't get my head around, let's say, my own skills, my own, let's say, added value on earth. So the first jobs were shitty. The first clients were shitty. I was not happy at all, to be honest. So I felt very sorry for myself. And I thought for a very long time, I made the wrong decision. I should have stayed with that big corporate because they gave me all the opportunities. So what do principles bring? Because I didn't want to lie because the CEO for sure was smarter than I was. So maybe he was right. Until today, to be very honest, he wasn't. But okay, that's looking back. But then, so that for me was really something really bad. So I didn't fuck up. Well, I did fuck up, but I fucked up myself, and I couldn't get a grip on myself. And then something happens, and my wife always told me, you were looking for the obvious things. So you were looking outside, but you didn't see what was there out there. And at a moment, and I don't recall exactly the moment, but at one moment in time, I thought, okay, now I know what you mean. I was looking at stuff, but I didn't see it. And from the moment I realized myself that, okay, you were looking at stuff, but you don't see it, I started to look much more intense, much more from a curiosity point of view. And I got Royal Heineken as international as a client. And the world flipped immediately. I mean, I was working in my field of expertise, business development, working directly for the CEO and the family, Mrs. De Carvalho, who owns the company, or at least owns most of the shares of the company. I was in projects I loved. So actually, what my learning was that, I had principles, and I'm glad afterwards that I stick to those principles, because I probably could not have looked into the mirror if I would have stayed with Ahold. But it took me quite a long time to accept the consequences of my principles. And it took me the wise words of my wife, who is my partner already for 40 years, to say very simply, you're looking at it, but you don't see it. So it's in front of you, and you better start really seeing it. And that was actually the best decision I ever made in my life, to quit from the corporate world, because the world outside of that corporate is so beautiful. That doesn't say that the 18 years within the corporate was shit, not at all, because I learned so much during that 18 years that the last year was not the most, nice year. But you have to go through those struggles, face front, open eyes, unconditional curiosity. Otherwise, you are becoming your biggest enemy yourself in your own development. And that was, I think, the biggest learning from a personal perspective I went through in my working career.
Awesome story. I can relate to that. So if anyone in the live stream has questions to the guests, please put them. I will start the questioning round with Roel. How was it? I mean, if we take Jean and myself, we're still in the first 2 years, and we're most probably like going through what you have been, somehow, at least a little bit, because it's never easy when you start a business. How was it? How did you keep moving in these first 2 years? What kept you moving and not going back?
Actually, people kept me moving. And then and what I mean with people, it was my father who kept me moving, kicking my ass all the time, that principles count. And I took the right decision, only I didn't understand it. The second was my wife, who said, the worst thing that can happen is that we have to sell our house, but we will be happy somewhere else. And actually, my two sons, they were 15 and 12 in those days. When I told them I was quitting, my oldest son really got worried. And he said, "Oh, Jesus, Dad, I'm going to college later on. And you know how much it costs. And can we stay in this house? Because I was born in that house," which was not true, by the way. But he really felt, okay, you are jeopardizing my future. And then my youngest son said very wise words. He said, "Dad, it's a good decision. I haven't seen you laughing for the last year." So that was on the family side that kept me moving. And on the other side, my best friend, who was a former colleague within Ahold, and he's still my best friend, and we're still, having our network together or running it together, because he allowed me to go through that, horrible period. And he kept on saying, "You're on the right track. You just have to accept the fact that you have to detox from, Ahold. You have to learn to face a new reality." And he was always supporting. And he was always, when I was in a black hole, he was always showing me the light somewhere. So it were people that kept me moving. It was not money. It was not status. It was not uncertainty. It was actually people that kept me moving in my mind. People that are very close to you, that you unconditionally trust, actually.
Yeah.
Because they don't have an agenda with you. They don't gain anything with you. They just love you.
Yeah.
It's a great story example.
Yes. And I believe it's definitely not easy to leave a corporate after 18 years. And it's also not easy to stick with your principles when everything goes south. But it looks like it is in the long run, as in the previous example, when retrospectively you say, wow, that's the best thing ever happened to me. And you have just said, Roel, it was the best decision of my life, and just want to thank you in the behalf of the audience, because you were so open about this, I think, very personal story. I mean, yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, then I have a question for Sepehr. Just maybe he would like to tell about, because he mentioned the sanctions and establishing a business in relatively different context, and then came the sanctions, and he built resilience with that. What's the secret to build resilience again in the difficult conditions?
Well, it's the biggest one is love for what you do. I mean, if you have definite love from deep down your heart for what you do, and you believe in what you do and believe in your abilities, nothing can make you fail. I mean, 4 years ago when I came back to Iran, basically here was a haven. The sanctions were lifted, and all the European companies were just competing with each other to come to our market and get market share. It was just amazing, unbelievable that the economy was boosting and everybody was full of hopes, until the big guy in the White House decided that it's time to just poop in our joy and ruin everything. So
Yeah.
one day he woke up. Yes, I remember that. We had a conference here. I had invited a lot of people from Total in France and some university professors from all over the world, from Berlin, from Netherlands. We had this conference in Isfahan. It's a beautiful city. And we were walking beside this river. It's a very famous river in Isfahan called Zayanderud. And suddenly, bing, 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 all our phones, we had this breaking news from CNN that Mr. Trump has signed a new order for the sanctions to be reinstated. And everybody was like, it was nice talking to you. It was nice visiting you, but now it's time to go back because we cannot pursue the business. I mean, back then we had a company of almost 60 people. Well, my father was the owner of the company, and I was the vice president. It was a family company. And well, we had principals, 15 principals, partners, business partners all over Europe and Asia. And the business was booming. And suddenly we started receiving letters from the day after that, everything is going to be too complicated. We're going to get fines. We cannot continue like this. Sorry, we're going to contact the customers. We had some excellent ongoing projects that we had to cancel all of them. We had to return the monies, and it was devastating. And our colleagues, one by one, our employees started to get doubts and leave, and everything was in chaos. And 1 year later, the company was finished almost. We it was just myself and my father, and all our principals had left, and the business was dead, completely dead. And we didn't even know what to do. Everything was so dark. I was depressed. My father was depressed. The whole family was in chaos. But I told my father that, you know what, for 45 years, during the war, during the recession, during the political, conflicts, you always found a way. And now that you're 70 years old, it's my time to just use what I've learned from you to start building whatever we had from scratch. And I remember I had to come to Europe every month, put on a backpack, go city by city in Germany to find new companies, not the big ones, but the small ones and medium ones that they didn't have any business in the United States and they weren't scared, and to find small banks that they could risk it to operate in the Iranian markets. It took me almost a year. I didn't have any income. I had some money from the past, some savings that I had to spend through it. And it's interesting to tell you that I had to go through the military service, mandatory military service at the same time. So I had to serve in the military and at the same time pursue my business. So it was very complicated. I had to work some days, I had to work 20 hours, 21 hours a day. But little by little, I could find some partners in Germany, in Europe, that they're willing to risk it and give us the opportunity to start from scratch. So at the beginning, again, it was just me and my father. But at little by little, we got some small, businesses in the steel industry, in the copper industry. Then we expanded to the automotive. Then we little by little expanded to oil and gas, power generation, and some demining businesses. And now I can say that we are a multi-million-dollar company, that we are one of the most renowned and successful engineering consulting in manufacturing in our country. And now we're trying to expand our business to the rest of the Middle East, which is a huge success for us. But if we had lost it, if we had didn't believe that we could rebuild it, if we hadn't learned from our mistakes in the past, if we hadn't learned from our success in the past, today I was a depressed guy sitting in a corner, didn't know what to do with my life, probably flipping burgers in some place. A fucked up failure story completely. But we learned how we could divert all these issues. And it's interesting now, because of all the sanctions, we have some monopoly on some of the businesses. So everybody, even people that they don't like our faces, they hate our guts, they don't have options but to work with us. So it's, sanctions weren't that bad at the end of the day, and we had to take advantage of this circumstances. And now I can call myself a self-made millionaire, and I'm very proud for what I've done. And I basically owe everything to my father, who taught me to never stop believing.
It's a super great story. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing. It's brilliant.
You're welcome.
I have a question to that. So, how long was this period of downturn? Because I guess a lot of entrepreneurs watching this live and later on in the recording are, it's like you go through difficult times and you hope it's just a week or two or three or four, but most of the time it's longer, I guess. And if we take Roel, it was like 2 years. How long was it for you?
Almost 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Yes, zero income, zero hopes. Everything was black. But
Yeah.
I believe that at the end of the tunnel there is always some light. And I was just in the middle, so I couldn't see the light from the beginning or the end. But the resilience, being a hardworking person, believing in myself and believing in what my father and what my other mentors have taught me, made me go through that extremely difficult and dark times. And now, I'm in the middle of the sun. It's light everywhere.
Yeah, it's great. We have
Yeah.
another one who is watching. I don't know the first name. From Iran, but living in Germany. Hello, or live from watching in Germany. Great story. So we still have a little bit of time. I can't see any questions. So it seems like nobody has questions to you right now. But Rule, if you have more stories, we can take another one if you have one, or
Yeah.
I'm asking questions.
No. I can share another one, but first I have a question to say for that is, there is a similarity between our stories, and it's in the end believing in what you're doing, and but also the trust, the self-confidence in that grows over time. But sometimes it happens to me that I wake up in the night and then I think, oh my God, will this continue? Do you have the same experience once in a while, or are you so confident that you will never think, okay, it might be, there might be a little pitfall somewhere?
Well, let me honest with you. I'm living in the Middle East, so basically, it's fucking terror and nightmares every day. You wake up and one country has collapsed completely, and there is a new
True.
government that is opposing everything the previous government believed. So, we are living in the middle of chaos and fire and wars and uncertainty and insecurity. So, basically, this is the story of my life. For you, it's every night. For me, it's every second. I mean, every
Yeah.
second I turn on the radio, I listen to the news, I read
Yeah.
the news, and there's a new policy that, for example, half of my business might be gone. The Iranian government right now, they're trying to impose sanctions on the internet, on the free internet. This is something that I have to say. And they are trying to create the national internet that is basically a complete censorship of the internet. And they're trying to control everything, read your emails, messages, have full control on all your online activities. And a lot of online businesses like me, because I have an online shop for selling industrial tools, we will ultimately suffer. So we don't know if this is really going to happen, or there's going to be some resistance by the lawmakers, by the people, by the government. We don't know. So this is what's happening every day. But sometimes I love, I really, this rush of adrenaline that I'm having every day, and this, believe me, this is what keeps me going for all my hopes and all my dreams, because otherwise everything is going to be flat and mainstream, and I'm not a big fan of that. I love risking.
Yeah, and there we might differ a little bit because of the mountaineering. I'm more in
Yeah.
controlled risk because
Yeah.
I know I can reach the top most of the times, but going back is always the biggest risk.
Yeah.
So I'm more a calculated risk taker there. But it's fascinating. Now I can understand. And by the way, what you told about Isfahan, I can only
Yeah.
say, oh Jesus, what a
Yeah.
gorgeous city. So everybody who's listening, if you want to go to one of the best cities on earth, visit Isfahan in Iran. No, just a little remark. No, another story I would like to share is, and
But may I
it's
ask you a question?
yeah.
May I ask you a
Sorry,
question before you?
sure.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Thank you very much. Sorry for that. Do you believe that for some people they're scared? They believe that there is a certain age to be successful. Now that there is social media and there is all these illusion that everybody has to be successful in their 20s. So when you started your own business, I believe you were some way in your 40s. Is it
yeah,
correct?
true.
How did you feel about that? Did people around you look at you like this, that this guy is too old to go for his own dreams? Did this ever happen to you?
Yeah, it did. Um, it did. People were saying you're too old. I was 42 when I decided to quit corporate life, and they said, "Jesus, that's old because now you only have, with the age you retire in Holland was in those days 65, so you have not enough time to secure, let's say, your income and your old days, etc., etc." And that, of course, that confuses you a little bit. At least it confused me in the beginning, especially in those first 2 years. But later, when we already were successful, I was called by a guy, and he said, "I got your number and your name from somebody you know, and a lady, and a private equity lady in Holland." And she said, "I should talk to you." And I said, "Okay, let's make an appointment." In the end, it was a 14-year-old guy who was presenting his business plan to me. And if I would agree with his business plan, the private equity lady would fund him. And Tel, his name, joined our network later on. And he actually introduced me to a whole bunch of entrepreneurs with a maximum age of 17. And they invited me, let's say, at their launching event. And I was asking Tal, why the heck do you invite somebody, I was 50 in those days, to that launching event? And I was sitting next to an entrepreneur of 12, a small lady with her parents in the back of the room who already made a few $100,000 online. And so I asked him the question, but I asked also the audience later the question. And they said, Roel, you are old in age. So you probably will die earlier than we do, but your experience is so meaningful for us, and the way you explain your experience to us is so meaningful for us. So please stay with us. So I'm still with them, and they are now in their 30s and very successful entrepreneurs. But there I learned age is just a very relative thing. Age is, let's say, the acceptance from yourself between your ears. I'm proud to say I'm 64. There's nothing wrong, but the best still has to come. And of course, you need your body. And so far, the body is in good shape. So that's luck, I would say, but the rest is all a mental game. So to answer your question, it has nothing to do with age. I mean, I learned from a 12-year-old little girl very intensive lessons when I was already 50. But they also accept my lessons. So we're adding value to one another. No, age is just a number. No.
There is one more similarity in between your stories, and just want to point out before Roel starts his new story. It's the support of the family and the loved ones, because in both of your cases, it was the family that kept you going in the way. And just wanted to emphasize that, because sometimes when we are deep in the business, we forget the ones that we most love actually. And but when we fail, or when we feel like we are failing, they are the ones for us there. So, and it can't be a coincidence that both of you mentioned that Sepehr, you mentioned your father. Roel, you've mentioned your father and your wife, and even your younger child giving you advice. So
Yeah.
that's just wanted to emphasize before you start with your next story.
No, that's. I think that's a similarity between Sepehr and myself. I mean, it's the unconditional trust, of course, based on love, that that goes beyond doing business. Actually, that's another level. That's a much deeper level you need actually to stay grounded, to make a lot of stuff where you are in your head. It's a fuck up completely, but still stay grounded. I mean, everything is relative. And there's more in life than only making money or worrying about your next client or your next, let's say, deal you're going to make. And I think that's very important. No, it's good that you emphasize on that, because that's something I realized along the way. And I respect it also more when now it's behind me. When I was in the middle of it, you think you take it for granted, but you don't know the value of it, to be honest. I didn't realize the value of it. Now, jumping to, and Jens, you or Son, you will cut off if time is running out. I think another thing, and it has to do with the belief Sepehr was also sharing. When we started our network, we were just the two of us, and Jacob was head of HR within the Royal Ahold, and I was head of business development. So we both worked for the board, and the world was our playing field. And when you showed your little card, I mean, with Royal Ahold and your function, all doors would open privately. So your status was depending on that. And then when we were out there and all the uncertainty started, but even a few years down the road, when we were already, the two of us were successful, we were invited to let's say, for a new job in Germany with a big company, and we were invited to the board to give our presentation. But it was a pitch, so there were two competitors, and they were sitting actually in the same hallway as we were. And there were huge companies, huge agencies, I must say, sitting in there in the hallway. And we had to go in first. So we did our story the best we could. And then the other two came, and we were sitting, the three of us there. And then the president, professor, doctor, engineer, real German, from Bayern, from Munich, actually. He came out, and in front of everybody, he came to me first, and he said, "You had the best story. You really had the best story. We would love to work with you. But what the heck is a network? So what happens? I mean, you give us your private address. So don't you have an office? What is your structure?" And he started talking about a lot of governance. So we're not granting you the deal. You're not getting this this task. And it pissed me off. Unbelievable. So they started working with a British-based agency, which had a beautiful office and all beautiful kind of, let's say, websites and stuff like that. And the mistake I made, the fuck up I made, that together with Jacob, we said, okay, we have to come up with a structure. We have to get an office. We have to get governance. We have to get people on the payroll. Because how could we, I mean, you could blame that stupid German that he didn't understand how we were working, but it's okay, he's the client, so we were fucking up. So we started, actually, we hired an office, we created, let's say, a payroll, we got people on the payroll, and then after a year, he called me, the same professor, doctor, engineer from Munich. He called me. He said, "Are you available?" Because I said, "Why?" Well, that English agency couldn't deliver what I expected. And I see on your website that you have an office now, and there is a structure. And then I thought something is going wrong here. So we had the best story, and we created something we actually didn't like because the structure. I mean, I was managing again instead of creating content. So I said very politely in my best German, no, thank you for the offer. And we are going to leave our office again, and we're going to build a network. Because in the end, and that's where we are very successful today, we have a group of friends, I call them, of 24 people with actually an extended network that's much bigger. And we share the same values. We're all independent entrepreneurs, and we are able to breathe in and out depending on the task we're getting. So we can be as valuable for a very small, tiny family business, or even in the healthcare business and work where I met Jens with the big Inca. And we are able to breathe. But because we trust our own organic system, we're not making money, let's say, on behalf of one another. We don't have an office. We live as gypsies traveling around the world. And the surprising thing, and that's my biggest learning, don't compromise your beliefs in the beginning, although you are challenged there. And of course, we are proud that, let's say, we are working for big airline companies and the big Inca already for years, and they never throw us out. We're hired back, even if the CEO is replaced, we stay. So we're doing something good, but it's still Roel in a little town north of Amsterdam with his network from all over the world that is doing the job. So stick to your beliefs and don't compromise your beliefs along the road when the whole world, not the whole world, but at least others from the old-fashioned world are challenging you. Stick to them. Don't fuck up there.
Love that.
That's a great story. And
especially for like young entrepreneurs who are just it's like even myself you always compare to, okay, what's going on, how do others do something which you might do in the same way, and how is their setup, so they seem successful, so it's like, okay, maybe you need to do that as well. Instead, like you said, Roel, sticking to your principles that you have set up for yourself. So I think that's I need to put that on myself as well to say, it's like, yeah, shit. Because sometimes when things are not working well, it's like, yeah, you kind of questioning your thoughts, you're questioning your principles.
Yeah.
But I think when you go through these rough times, that's when you kind of refine your principles, and it's like, if you go through it, then as better they are, because you stick to them, or you refine them in a way that they're really, really differentiating you from others in the future.
And one last word on that, because those are wise words, Jens. I learned from an Indian chief in the US. He says he taught me that my brain is always fucking and negotiating with myself. He said you should make sure that you create a connection between your head and your heart, because your heart will never lie and your brain is always negotiating. So make sure, of course, you will negotiate all the time, but also make sure that you trust your gut feeling, symbolized by the heart, because in the end, the heart wins and not the brain.
That's a great one.
And it was a very wise chief.
Yeah,
I must say.
Yeah,
Navajo.
wise words. Yes, very wise words.
So we're reaching an hour. There comes a question from Linda. Let's put it up. Roel, do you agree that you might have been simply ahead of time, seeing how traditional conservative German can be at times? Good question. Thank you, Linda.
No, Linda, you're absolutely right. And I mentioned the German example because that is, let's say, in my head all the time. But it has nothing to do with Germans because we face similar, let's say, mindsets. And I think we were ahead of, with our ideas, we were ahead of, let's say, what was accepted as being normal. So we wanted to work for those big clients, those big corporate global corporates, but you always have to, let's say, respect their, let's say, place of departure And so you always have to make sure that you are the one that builds the bridges, and don't judge that they are conservative and we are very progressive, because that's also a wrong mindset. So you can be very progressive, but that's always learnings afterwards. But make sure that you keep on building those bridges. So it's not that you are not right, but other people will have to say you are right.
I think it's about believing in yourself, and I can absolutely relate to that story because I moved back to Germany last summer after living 7 years abroad in different countries, and on top of that, started to work in my own business full time, and I have experienced similar things. I was talking to one of the big sports companies. There are only two big ones, and they literally asked me about it's like my grades from school, and that has like zero connection to whatever we talked about, but they wanted to know that. And I just like, I can't believe that coming from Sweden where I lived before, it's like nobody would ever ask you in a business context, hey, what did you do like 20 years ago from a grades perspective? What does it mean for our conversations, like strategy, whatever you talk about for after 20 years? Like nothing. But yeah, I've seen that in the German organization literally in the last 12 months. So it's still there. Maybe I'm too progressive for that. That grades don't matter.
True.
At least not after 20 years.
Yeah,
Exactly.
my story proved that as well. Yes, I had very bad grades. I have to be honest, I had very bad grades at bachelor's, but I have a PhD. I published in Nature Scientific Reports. I have 2 patents. So basically, I mean, my grades 18 years ago has nothing to do with who I am right now. Maybe I had a different perspective back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are there more questions? Anything we have missed to tell? We are already over an hour. And I really appreciate that the two of you taking your time. And I guess it's already quite late in Iran. I don't know. How much time difference?
You can see the moon right over here.
Yeah.
I'm sitting outside, so there's somewhere over there. Yes, that's the moon. And
2.5 hours, right? Sepehr, it should be
right now it's 1.5 hour. Our daylight saving is different from yours, so we have 1.5 hours right now, but it's going to be 2.5 hours soon after
soon
you
it
also
will be
come
2.5.
Yes, exactly. But now it's 1.5 hours.
But it was amazing to learn from you, Roel and Sepehr, and as always, Jens. I still have 4.5 hours drive.
Yeah, good luck.
But really, what struck me today was the similarities of both of your stories, but from different part of the world, different industries, everything different, but the similarities, believing in yourself, the support of your family and the loved ones, and also building resilience in the difficult times were struck with me. And Jens also mentioned the same. We all go from the same, like the cosinus or the sinus thing. We all go from the same circles, so to say, and learn from you a lot. Just on behalf of the audience and for myself, I thank you a lot to you, Roel. Dankjewel, and to you, Sepehr. I know Salamati in Farsi.
You're more than welcome.
I can't do that in any other language except Russian. I could do, but yeah, thank you very much. As Jean was saying, it was a pleasure to have you on the live stream. I hope the people watching it live and still later on in the recording got a lot out of it. For everyone who is watching this as well later in the recording, you're welcome to ask questions in the chat further on, and I try to connect that to Roel and Sepehr, so that we get a little bit of conversation rolling. And of course, you're always welcome to go to LinkedIn or any other platform, finding Roel and Sepehr and connect. Same in the same way to Jean and myself. We're trying to do another one already in, when was it, John? What did we say? When do we do the next one?
1st of December. It's a Wednesday. Should be
Yes.
the first Wednesday of December. Yeah, same.
And we go
Same
6 o'clock
concept.
again. So 6 o'clock Central European time. So anyone interested in being a speaker, reach out to us. We're happy to get you onto the live stream. And yeah, thank you very, very much for watching. Thank you very much for contributing. And see you latest on 1st of December. Thank you, Roel. Thank you, Sepehr. Thank you, John.
Thank you for the
Ciao.
opportunity.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, Jens.
Thank you.